Alrighty, a very, very happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of the TNC Sports Talk. My name is Justin, and we are going to get you guys ready for some weekend sports. We'll go over SmackDown's preview about what's expected to take place this evening, and I was just kind of looking at the list, and they're already moving on from the WWE Championship match this past Friday, and they're ready to determine their new number one contenders in qualifying matches. So we'll review that. That's interesting. I also got a story coming out of the wrestling world about a possible WWE signing that we should be on the lookout for. NCAA Championship game will be taking place on Monday night, January 19th at 7:30. But I'm going to provide you my predictions today, kind of talk a little bit about the upcoming college football game, because by the time we record and publish our episode on Monday night, then the game would be in progress. So I didn't want to give you a chance to think maybe, he's watching the game and based off the outcome, he's going to change his decision. So I'm going to give you my prediction and who's going to win. I would tell you this, if I did it under like the bracket concept for March Madness, I would have been eliminated because I did not have Indiana beating, I didn't have Miami beating Ohio State. So, I would have been eliminated from it. I wouldn't have won. But we will also be looking into the upcoming divisional round games. There are 4. And I know I gave you my predictions yesterday. I got a chance to sleep on them. And I'm still sticking with my predictions. I think that they're bold predictions. I think that the 49ers have a leverage to beat the Seahawks. I think that the Bills have a leverage to beat the Broncos. I think that the Patriots will win and advance. And I think that the Los Angeles Rams will advance to the next round. But one thing, we are learning a little bit more heading into a Friday about what we can expect based off of injuries. So I have a couple of injuries that I will share with you at the end of the program that I don't know if it will change my opinion on who I think is going to win, but it may change someone's opinion on who I think is going to win. So I'm interested in learning what you guys have to say, what you guys think, and leave me a chat in the comments. So let's get down to business. And majority of our episode today is going to be talking about Major League Baseball, as Blockbuster deals have circulated and unfolded this morning, late last night, regarding the top free agent of Major League Baseball, Kyle Tucker, who has finally reached an agreement and with the Los Angeles Dodgers for a 4-year, $240 million deal. I woke up this morning and I saw this plastered all over social media. I saw this plastered all over the news. And it just kind of, I wasn't fazed by it. It wasn't shocking to me. I wasn't, oh my goodness, let's stop what we're doing. It wasn't that type of moment, but I think it's a big deal in multiple different areas. First of all, Kyle Tucker is signed, has been signed. This does kind of affect, as we're 3, maybe 4 weeks away from, pitchers and catchers reporting, and we're just about a month and a half away from the first spring training games. This kind of acts as a domino effect for the rest of the free agency. So we see players like Bryce Hoskins and Cody Bellinger players that have not been signed, this kind of allows the room for teams to now, let's go sign everyone underneath Kyle Tucker. But the first thing that I was just thinking about when I was learning about this deal is, are you really surprised? Am I really surprised about Kyle Tucker? Out of all the places he could go, he signs with the Los Angeles Dodgers. I heard rumors about the Toronto Blue Jays trying to offer him a long-term deal. The New York Mets offer similarities. There are some reports that even said that Kyle Tucker took a little bit less than a pay cut to play for the Dodgers. But I'm just like, this is the Dodgers. If they want anybody, money's not an object for the Dodgers. They're not fazed by anything. 4 years, $240 million, I think is outrageous. I mean, Kyle Schwarber got paid 5 years, $150 million. And I believe that Kyle Schwarber is just a little bit better than Kyle Tucker. This is, I think, an outrageous deal. This, if it hasn't already been said about the Dodgers, this now just puts the Dodgers in their own little world. I don't care about the other 29 teams, but the other 29 teams should be frustrated and aggravated about this situation. I was listening to sports radio this morning, and I have to agree. I got a gut feeling that we may be heading into another lockdown next year when CBA agreements come arising again. And so be it. If that means that something has to be done, I don't necessarily think that there's going to be a salary cap on these things. But, if you're the Dodgers and you look at this deal, it's just money. This doesn't mean nothing. But when other teams look at this deal, it's like, it's gut-wrenching. It's, how do you even want to compete, or how could you possibly compete against a team that is not frugal about their spending? I mean, Kyle Tucker, in the $240 million contract, he has $64 million in signing bonuses, $30 million in deferrals. He has an opt-out option after the second or third year. So if he's looking for that long-term deal, I mean, he has just set the record for the highest average annual value player for a position player at about $57 million a year. I mean, that puts Juan Soto's $51 million to shame. And one thing that's been tied along to this Kyle Tucker's deal is that there's rumors and reports that he's not necessarily all that enthusiastic about playing baseball 162 games a season. Well, for the Dodgers, you don't have to do that. Maybe that's the reason why Kyle Tucker signed with the Dodgers. It's because you don't have to necessarily be required to play for the duration of the entire year. If the Dodgers really wanted to, they could tell Kyle Tucker, you know what? All right, I'll see you in September. When we go to the playoffs, you just show up in September and do your thing. I think it's mind-boggling if you think about that. Is that there's no player on the Dodger roster that's required, that's going to make that, it's going to be a difference maker whether or not the Dodgers make it to the playoffs or nonetheless win a division if they don't play 162 games. We look at this Reds team, for example, and I think of it, compared to the Reds, it's like, I'm going to need everyone on deck for this year. I'm going to need Spencer Steer as much as possible. I'm going to need Ellie De La Cruz. And it was just this past fall that we were talking about Ellie De La Cruz needing some days off. So how do you incorporate days off where we could still have Ellie in the lineup about 150 times a year, but taking him off his feet so he could rest. That was something that even Terry Francona admitted, that this season he will make it a priority to balance and strategize that lineup so that Ellie De La Cruz doesn't need to be on the field 140, 162 games a year. But the Dodgers, Mookie Betts is not required. With or without Kyle Tucker, the Los Angeles Dodgers still had a solid 95, if not 98% chance of winning the division and going back to the World Series. They are a dominant team, and I think this is just one of those images that you look back on and say, well, now the Dodgers are just rubbing it in our face. I find it funny, Tucker will be joining outfielders, like Teoscar Hernandez, Andy Pages, Alex Call. I mean, he's expected to kind of fill in for that right field side. Maybe the Dodgers change Tucker's way and motivation. But look at this team. You got a potential lineup. I'll break it down for you. Ohtani batting first at the DH position. Shortstop batting second is Mookie Betts. Freddie Freeman at first. Kyle Tucker in right field. Will Smith at, behind the plate. Max Muncy at third base. Teoscar Hernandez in left field. Tommy Edman at second base, and Andy Pages in center field. This is really, you talk about an all-star lineup. This is the closest you're going to possibly get. And it doesn't seem like the Dodgers are even near to be done with this deal. Let's not forget, they went ahead and signed Edwin Diaz to a $69 million deal for 3 years as their primary closer. The Dodgers' projected luxury tax on their payroll this year is $350 million. Not even double. That's more than double than what the Reds have to offer. I feel like I said, the Reds are in their own circle. They're in their own bubble. Or the Dodgers are in their own bubble. And when I look back and I'm like, how do teams compete? I could just imagine right now what everyone else is saying in that division. Are they relieved? Are they surprised? I'm sure they're irate. I would be frustrated. The Rockies just signed Willie Castro to a deal. The Diamondbacks have attempted to sign some players, bringing in Nolan Arenado and keeping Ketel Marte in hopes that they have a chance at a division title. Even the Padres re-signing Michael King. But then the Dodgers just, mid-January, swoop right in, pick up Kyle Tucker just for the hell of it, and they kind of shut up and quiet down the rest of the division. So, if you're in the National League West, the good news is you don't have to worry about competing for a division. You have to worry about, you can sit back and cruise all your way into a wild card spot. But man, I feel like the Dodgers are just laughing, licking their chops at the rest of the world in this deal. It's crazy to even think that. And it's not so much Kyle Tucker and picking him up. It's this lucrative contract you're paying a player $60 million who can practically sit there for the next, 4 to 6 months and wait for the postseason to come before he wants to show up. And I'm not trying to bash Kyle Tucker. I don't think he's a bad guy. I don't think he's a bad player. Last season he was batting .266. He had He had 22 home runs. He had 25 stolen bases. When he's there, he can perform. But when you're out there, you're watching these these players out there that are already great. Juan Soto, Teoscar Hernandez, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts. They're all out there taking reps before games, after games, on their days off. They're already always trying to add to their skill of talent and continue to learn and adapt to the changes of the game. Then there's players that are perceived, and Kyle Tucker fits under this category, that says, hey, I'm good. I don't need to put any more work into my craft, that I'm just going to show up. And, like I said, he doesn't need to be the center of attention. This is going to be news that, he's going to sink right into this lineup. He's going to sink and be kind of one of this afterthought throughout the course of the year. He'll make some splashes, but he doesn't need to hold any kind of weight on his shoulders, and he'll show up when he wants to show up. And this is as long as the Dodgers allow it to happen. But, this doesn't just apply to Kyle Tucker. It doesn't fall on Shohei Ohtani. It doesn't fall under Mookie Betts anymore, Max Muncy. They can now strategize this year in highlighting key players. All right, this is in May, we're going to back off on this player, maybe give him some more resting days, and he doesn't perform well. Like, Dave Roberts has it made out for him, and it just gets even better for him in an opportunity of going on to winning another World Series. But it got me thinking, like I said, I don't necessarily think that we're going to end up getting a salary cap for these players. But, it gets me thinking about, what should be changed, because, the Dodgers, it's just free willing to spend. A lot of people are out to say, well, who cares? But what does it do for everyone else? What does it do for low market teams that, don't have the budget to, spend $50-60 million on a single ball player? We're talking about Reds baseball over here, and we're trying to come up with, with what we do have, can we land anyone? The Mets, I think, you took a blow. If you're Toronto, if you're the Mets, all right, it's move forward. How do we bounce back? And how do we walk away some sort of victorious over this deal that we did not get? But was it a good decision? Was it best for business? If you're Toronto or the Mets, if you think about it, was it the right decision? Hey, it wasn't going to work out, and so be it. Because now you can focus on other players. I mean, Houston decided to drop Kyle Tucker. So the Cubs took him on last year. Not even a year goes by and Kyle Tucker is back again in free agency, not willing to pay him out. So the Dodgers are along that line. But I got to say that it doesn't shake up baseball, but it gets you guts you out, any chances of trying to contend. I don't know, the Padres, it could work one of two ways. The Dodgers could go on and win another World Series, or they can, utterly fail. And I will sit back and think about this contract deal. And, and I guess, and come to terms when you think about this deal, got me realizing players like Juan Soto and Aaron Judge are not getting paid enough. If you think about it, I certainly think that they're not getting paid enough if you look at this deal, because no disrespect to Kyle Tucker, Juan Soto is a better ball player than you. Aaron Judge is a better ball player than you. They should be getting paid more. But man, I gotta say, it wasn't so much the deal itself, more so what is being said around the deal and how people are portrayed about it. You got all these reports out there. They're excited. They're saying this is great for baseball, and sure, but it's not great for the other 29 baseball teams. Something has to be changed, and I don't know what that's going to be, but it may end up turning into a lockout here next season if this doesn't get under control. All right, the Kyle Tucker deal was not the only deal that took place in the last 24 hours. The Cincinnati Reds were involved in a three-way deal that sent the Angels right-handed pitcher Chris Clark and the Reds infielder Gavin Lux to the Rays. The Angels received outfielder Josh Lowe, and the Reds received left-handed pitcher Brock Burke from the Angels. And this kind of really, at first, I wasn't really necessarily thinking this was a big deal. Really don't know who Brock Burke is. Last season, he went 7-1. He pitched. He had a 3.36 ERA with 70 games. And what we're sending off is a 28-year-old, batter who really, honestly, only fit our designated hitter spot. He was used as a backup player to second base and had some fill-in roles in the outfield. He was getting paid $5.5 million. He batting .269 with 5 home runs, 53 RBIs in 140 games. And so when I was thinking about this deal to begin my day, I was kind of upset because I feel like you've taken away an at-bat from what we have available on the field. But as I was reading into it and I was trying to compare, contrast, we know the Reds. I think if you don't know the Reds, let me incite you. The Reds are a pitching-based strategy type ball club. They want to focus right now on applying enough. They want to give our team enough chances to win through our pitching. It was a few years ago that our pitching was terrible. And now I feel like between our starting rotation, between our bullpen, which Brock Burke is one of those candidates that's fit in the 7th or even 8th slot of that bullpen. We build and we strengthen our bullpen, and we'll compromise with a weaker, defense and offensive front, knowing that our bullpen and our rotation will keep us into ball games heading into the 7th, 8th, or 9th. And then we will capitalize, or at least our intent is to capitalize on other teams' bullpen weaknesses in order to pull through it, and pick up a victory. So what does this deal really do for the Reds? Well, first of all, on the field, it gives more playing time to J.J. Bleday, Dane Myers, Will Benson. We knew by now that, Matt McLean's your everyday second baseman. The only thing I think I struggle with is maybe we have our outfield can be rotated in and out, sure, but who is our designated hitter? I don't figure that Tyler Stevenson would be our everyday designated hitter. Maybe you substitute, a Spencer Steer one time, maybe an Ellie De La Cruz on his strategy days off, so to speak. But we do give more playing ability for these younger guys. And I was reading an article that someone posted. I don't remember who, but it was talking about how they were comparing this team now after this deal related back to the 1999 Reds and how they were pitching first, offense second, and they were able to win ball games that way. This also opens up a $2.5 to $3 million availability. You think about Brock Burke, who's only making $2 and maybe $250,000. That's half of what Gavin Lux, spent. We were paying him for, and yeah, we added a left-handed pitcher to our bullpen, but at the same time, we are also adding some more money into our pockets. Think about Austin Hayes. We're spending about $2.5 million on Austin Hayes, Brent Suter, and Scott Barlow not to be on our roster this year. That kind of frees them up, and that gives us another $3 million. So we talked yesterday about this $14 million is where the Reds are at payroll. They only got about $600,000 left. It adds about another $3 million to that conversation. And, as we head into spring training, are the Reds necessarily done? I know yesterday we've had those conversations about possibly dealing out Tyler Stevenson, maybe even a Brady Singer. If the focus point is to strengthen our rotation and our pitching, Brady Singer would probably be one of the least more optimal pitchers to get rid of. He's more prominent and more secure in our rotation in a 3, 4, 5 spot of our depth. But then what about Tyler Stevenson? You have two catchers making over $5 million this year. It's kind of hard to imagine because Tyler Stevenson's not necessarily, I think he provides a little bit more to offensive power than what we normally see out of the rest of the organization. But does $3.5 million open up a possibility of adding to our offensive, ability? Maybe it's another player. Maybe I don't know what a deal looks like, to be honest. And who would sign a $3 million maybe off of a 1 year? I know someone threw out the name of Rice Hoskins. Could he be available for $3 million for a season? Maybe we could go out and just get a designated hitter for that much. Maybe if we, over time, the Reds do make another trade or, decide to part ways with somebody, opens up the opportunity, with the payroll. We talk about, Tyler Stevenson opening up a $5.5 million payroll. That adds up. That just improves off of the 3 we have. So there, the point is there is room. When we thought yesterday the Reds are practically done, they go out and make a deal like this. And so it kind of has come to me by surprise. I was most definitely shocked by it. But, and I didn't have the most pleasant thought about it when I first saw the news. I'm like, what are we doing here? But after sitting on it throughout the day, I've been able to come to terms and conclusions that it's probably best for business. We've done our due diligence this offseason by picking up Blade and Dane Myers. Let's see what they have. If it's better than what, Gavin Lux was able to give us. I mean, like I said, Gavin Lux would have been probably my best position to be a more of a designated hitter role. And to be honest, he doesn't have the numbers to show the power there to be there in that lineup on a consistent basis. Alrighty, before we move on in our sports conversation here on a Friday, and trust me, this hour is going by, I want to just talk a little bit about Enlighten Studios, just like I do every day. Enlighten Studios has a calendar worth of events that I encourage you guys to stay up to date, stay connected, and be well informed. Come join us and join the performing arts world in 2026. You could do so by following Enlightened Studios on their Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and also on their YouTube page. Follow, share, let your friends know. They got upcoming events here in the month of February. As we head into Valentine's Day, they have an event coming on called Paint and Pastries, where you get to enjoy time, whether you have had years of experience or zero experience. You can sign up and join this class between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. on Friday, February 13th at the Archville Theater in Cincinnati, Ohio, where you get to enjoy tasty treats and paintings and enjoy a session by your local artist. So tickets are still available. A link will be provided in the description below. I encourage you, if you have nothing going on, it's great for parties, it's great for groups. They hold private sessions as well. They have a paint and pastries event going on every month from February through November. And I encourage you at some point this year, if you're in the area, to stop by, check them out. You don't want to miss one of these events and have a good time doing so. Also, at the end of February, beginning of March, the performing arts company Enlighten Studios will be putting on a theater production called Grassroots. A production about family, faith, and forgiveness, about the courage to face the truth in a time, place set back in the 90s where a black family moves into a neighborhood and the truth that comes out, and you'll get a little taste of history. You'll get a taste of humor and storytelling, great narratives, and you are guaranteed to walk away with a message-driven performance. Grassroots will be held from February 27th through March 8th at the Archville Theater in Cincinnati, Ohio. Tickets are still available. I will provide a link in the description below, or you can scan the QR code that is popped up here on the screen. I am excited for both events that are coming on. I think it's a great way to get, great way to get out there. The weather is going to be still cold and glimpsy, and they're good events indoors. One of my biggest things that issues I've had during the fall, winter time was when the time changes, when it gets darker by 5 or 6, you find me indoors. I don't have a rhyme or reason unless needed to go out of my house. Around that time, I would always find myself, it's dark, I'm inside. I would also like to encourage people to stay up to date and to stay involved into new things that are going on with Enlighten Studios. So if you're not really big into social media, fine. But we, Enlighten Studios, have expanded this year into the podcasting stream. They have a few weekly podcasts currently going on that is under the engine search of Light in the City. Light in the City is a umbrella for Enlighten Studios podcasting projects. They have a weekly episode called the Enlighten Express, where they provide you all news and events related towards Enlighten Studios. They have an upcoming one coming up Monday on Martin Luther King, set to release at 5 p.m. I encourage you guys to check them out. Follow, it would be much appreciated. That is hosted by me and Brittany Brown, who is part of their marketing and social media team. She's hosting a podcast herself that you don't want to miss out. Enlighten experiences and educational point of views about theater productions, Enlighten Studios, and the wonderful city of Cincinnati. So check them out here on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, practically anywhere you get your podcasting at, and also on Spreaker. They will also release every episode on YouTube and on Facebook when they launch. All right. Well, it is a Friday, which means that SmackDown is going to take place tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on USA Network. And WWE seems to be moving on quite quickly from just last week, where we saw Drew McIntyre and Cody Rhodes go through a 3 stages of hell match for the WWE Championship. And that match included a standard one-on-one match where Drew McIntyre won by a low blow and pinned Rhodes. Rhodes came back in match 2 in a Falls Count Anywhere match to pin Drew after delivering Crossroads on top of the announce table. And we also saw in the third match, a steel cage match, the return of Jacob Fatu and his altercation between both Drew and Cody allowed Drew to escape the cage to become the new WWE champion. Now, Drew's expected to make his appearance tonight and address the WWE for the first time since winning the WWE Championship. And on top of that, we're already in line to learning who's going to be the new number 1 contender, as Nick Aldis has 4 qualifying matches to determine the number 1 contender for the new WWE Championship. Tonight, we will see Randy Orton take on The Miz, Damian Priest take on Solo Sikoa, Sami Zayn take on Ilja Dragunov, and Matt Cardona take on Trick Williams. Diversity here. I think this is... I feel like the WWE is wanting to highlight and push and move their direction towards the road to WrestleMania. It's hard to picture that Cody Rhodes in 2025 came in with the WWE Championship, lost it to John Cena at WrestleMania, regained it back at SummerSlam by beating John Cena, and then he has now lost it again, but this time to Drew McIntyre and thanks to Jacob Fatu. And sure, I think that opens up a can of questions and interesting rivalries that we could see in this time of year heading into the road to WrestleMania. But one of the things that I have not seen is who is really next in line to be contending for this title. Cody has just gone through the last 2 to 3 months of a feud with Drew McIntyre that has gone really personal. I think one of the favorite feuds that I've enjoyed so far this past year. And you're telling me that last Friday night, the conclusion of the show where Drew, becomes a new champion, Cody is beat down by Jacob Fatu, and Jacob is now just staring off into the waves as he stares down Drew McIntyre. You're telling me that WWE is going to just stop that feud, stop that storytelling, and to move on as we get ready for Road to WrestleMania. I really don't know where else and how else you could elevate the feud between Cody and Drew, and now you got Jacob in the middle of it. But to move on to these qualifying matches, and Cody Rhodes is not listed, it seems to me that they want to put a pin in this rivalry for now. Cody will come back in maybe a week or 2 or a couple weeks, and I don't know what kind of feud he's going to be led into. Because the bigger question that I still want answers to is who attacked Jacob back in October. I've watched the ending to SmackDown 3 or 4 times this week to try to just figure out if there was any hints, and I'm still uncertain about who has attacked Jacob. I want to see, because I posted on Twitter. That's what I call it, at least. I want to see if I could get the results. I posted on Twitter the question last weekend, earlier this week. Who was the one who attacked Jacob Fatu? You can still chime in. But on Twitter, I asked, with Jacob Fatu's return, an attempt to stop Drew McIntyre from escaping the cage, but a brawl breaks between Jacob and Cody Rhodes, allowing Drew to escape and win the WWE Championship. Who attacked Jacob Fatu back in October? So far, there's a 60% of the people who voted said that Cody Rhodes did it, and the others have said that that Drew McIntyre. So 60-40%. That's where we're at. It eggs me to believe we honestly do not know who attacked Jacob. So that's going to be my number one thought heading into SmackDown tonight. And I don't think we're going to learn much of those answers. Carmelo Hayes will also host another United States Championship Open Challenge match, as I'm actually happy in how this title has been represented and put up. This is something that was dated back when Ilja Dragunov won the United States Championship, and I like the idea of utilizing this title and contending each and every week. Got to remember, SmackDown is on a 3-hour time, and they have to fill in some slots. I think this only does one. I think this only helps the United States Championship. I think it helps Carmelo Hayes because it keeps him active in the ring, still working on his skills. That was a conversation we had briefly yesterday, how, with the lack of house events, we don't necessarily see athletes put in a lot of matches. And so every time you can get a chance to have a match, that just helps yourself out and helps you progress, and especially if it's with different people. But that is your SmackDown in a nutshell coming into tonight. We're still on the road to WrestleMania, to the Royal Rumble. I will say that. But yeah, who do you guys think attacked Cody Rhodes? Head over to our Twitter page, our X page, and vote in the comments and leave a comment. And I'm interested to see what the final results are. They got about 9 hours left to vote. All right, other WWE news that I wanted to share with you. This is kind of maybe took some reports in an interesting conversation, as it seems that the WWE has shown interest in an AEW wrestler who has allowed their contract to expire as of yesterday. And it was reported through Bleacher Report that AEW's Powerhouse Hobbs contract expired on January 15th. WWE has shown interest. Tony Khan has made Hobbs a substantial offer, but he's turned it down. Since 2022, when Cody Rhodes left AEW, he was the first star to kind of come back to the WWE. We've seen athletes like Jade Cargill, CM Punk, Ethan Page, Ricky Saints, Penta, Andrade, Rusev, Aleister Black, and even Blake Monroe leave AEW to come back to the WWE. Now, Hobbs has expressed his frustration, his use, and so is this a good time to be interested in working out a deal with WWE? And I think it is. One of the big motivations that I would encourage Hobbs to consider if he is undetermined whether or not his future is hold in the WWE is we're seeing the call-ups from athletes like Obafemi, Trick Williams, and Javon Evans. And so if you're questioning, well, where do I fit along that line? Well, one, I know NXT has lost 3, not 1, but 3 key valuable players that has elevated and has been the primary source to NXT's success in 2025. So, I know that Powerhouse Hobbs he's a giant, and AEW doesn't necessarily have a lot of compelling storylines with big guys, but he can come over to the WWE. I think he could dominate and power through success, become the next NXT champion right off the bat. You got NXT Stand and Deliver. This is a popular time for both WWE and NXT, and give it a shot. I mean, if you saw these 3 athletes who took NXT by storm last year, who knows what is available now there. And, there was a kind of, someone said, oh, well, start them off on the main roster. I don't know. I'm still trying to get comfortable with Javon Evans and Trick Williams. I'm still trying to get comfortable with someone like, Obafemi, who really, realistically, although he, relinquished his title, he hasn't really made any debuts officially on SmackDown or Raw. I mean, we just saw Jordan Grace get called up as well. So this is that time. We're in the roads now, and I think a perfect spot would be the Royal Rumble. Make his Royal Rumble appearance, and then have him down in NXT for a year, run and dominate that, and see where it goes. So, I'm at this point. WWE provides a lot of prominence to certain athletes that don't necessarily get that front line attention in other wrestling companies. TNA, Impact, AEW, Japan, and vice versa. The conversation could be argued the same way, where WWE is stacked. They focus on their certain talents. There's people that have been underutilized. Let's be honest. LA Knight's one of those guys. Maybe Rusev has not had a solid AEW run or WWE run since his return. And so it's not meant for everybody, but why not give it a try? Especially where we're seeing the success come from. So that will be something that I want to keep an attention to. I don't know why AEW doesn't necessarily want to push some of these bigger guys. That is a question that always baffles me. But, a few years ago, I love Wardlow. I think Wardlow is a great, talented guy. I didn't know why AEW didn't decide to push. I thought we felt years ago he was going to get pushed, and he didn't. And he's always just kind of been shut down in the mix. And, it is what it is. But, I don't know, new change, new look. Shake things up. That would be a blockbuster deal when we see Powerhouse Hobbs in the WWE. All right, on Monday night, we will see the NCAA Championship game take place, available on ESPN at 7:30 p.m. Number 10 Miami will take on number 1 Indiana. And Indiana has won 0 championships, where Miami has won 5 titles. The last one was back in 2001, so they're definitely overdue. But I've been seeing the trajectory of, who's a fan of what team, what state is a fan of what team. And it seems like every state besides maybe California and Florida are fans of Miami to win, and everywhere else is Indiana. I'm going to be honest. I got nothing against any of these teams. It's going to be taking place at the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, Florida, where I think Miami has an upward advantage being on home field turf. They have conquered, number 7 Texas A&M. They beat number 2 Ohio State, which I thought was very impressive. And they beat number 6 Ole Miss. They got Carson Beck, who's been in the college football for the past 6 years, been with Georgia for 5 of those years. He's thrown for the tenor with 11,493 yards. He's had 87 touchdowns and 31 interceptions to go up against a Heisman Trophy winner, Fernando Mendoza. He's only he spent 2 years with California, who went 30 touchdowns and 16 interceptions. He's really turned things around for Indiana, right? This year alone, 41 touchdowns, 73% completion rate, over 3,000 yards and 6 interceptions. I mean, this is going to be as equal of a battle that you're going to get when it comes down to quarterback preview. But Miami's going to bring the defense. Akeem Mesidor and, Ruben Bain Jr., combined about 19 sacks this year, really going to pass rush Mendoza. Mark Flesher alone, he's averaging about 131, yards a game. And so Miami, has a lot of hype. When you go out and you beat teams like Ohio State, Miami was an afterthought, was arguably one of those debatable things because it was with Miami. And I remember when Notre Dame was like, who's going to have the final spots in the college football playoff bracket? Everyone said, no, Miami doesn't deserve to be in there, but they gave them a shot anyways, and look where they're at. They're in the right one. So you know what? Congratulations. Give you a round of applause to NCAA and whoever made the bracket, because Miami, number 10, has proven to everyone that they belong. Indiana is, let's turn over to Indiana. You talk about the Heisman Trophy winner, Fernando Mendoza. First Heisman Trophy winner out of Indiana in franchise history. He outscored Alabama and Oregon 94-25 in combined points. Head coach Kurt Cincinnati is 26-2 since leaving James Madison, really turning this program around. In Indiana, let's not remind you that over the past 3 years prior to this year, Indiana was 9-27, the most losses in FBS history. So Indiana's really turned things around. Miami has really proven to everyone just where they belong. So who do you choose? And I'm going to subside by what the nation is rooting for. I think it is a clear coin toss, but Indiana has made the most improvements this year. Indiana, I think, has been more consistent this year. And therefore, I think Indiana will walk away with the win. It won't be an easy win, but I think they'll walk away with the win. And Mendoza's just going to prove to the nation why he was a Heisman Trophy winner. Now, would it be shocking to see Miami pull off a victory and upset Indiana and the Hoosiers and Mendoza? No, absolutely not. But I think Indiana would have a chance, has a better opportunity of winning. So that's who I'm going to root for on Monday night. So let me know down in the comments who you guys root for. It's just a quick, interesting couple notes heading into divisional round weekend. I know I gave you my predictions yesterday, and I reiterate them at the beginning of the program. But just upcoming news. Yesterday, Sam Darnold tweaked his oblique during practice. He is still quite, capable of playing on Saturday, but it's going to, the question is, how is it going to affect him? And if that's going to possibly lead a disadvantage to Seattle heading into this game. Sam Darnold had to claw his way to get into this postseason, win the final, game of the season to get the number 1 seed. So is that going to really impact the Seahawks? Josh Allen, he's listed. Man, look at this list: foot, knee, and a right finger injury. Okay. The Broncos have linebackers Dre Greenlaw, who's dealing with a knee injury, and Drew Sanders dealing with an ankle injury. And then Lucas Cole has a foot injury. Houston, they're still uncertain about Nico Collins with a concussion rating from being taken out on Monday's game. And Matthew Stafford is still dealing with a right finger injury on his throwing hands. So, and I get it. Postseason, people are injured. Sure, Matthew Stafford can play around these type of injuries. Josh Allen has been here before where he's been banged up. How much does these injuries affect and take a toll on the chances of you winning a game? I'm still going to stick by my predictions and think that the Rams are better off, progressing and beating the Bears and the Niners and the Bills, and even the Patriots are going to walk away victorious. So that is just kind of a brief look at with the injuries and whatnot. But that is all the time I have for you guys. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Please follow us on our social media accounts: Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, wherever you guys get your social media news. Please follow us, share it with a friend, like our show on our YouTube channel, like, share, and subscribe. And also be sure to download us and take us on the road with you everywhere you go on our podcasting apps. We're on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and anywhere you get your podcasting needs. We will be back on Monday with a recap of NFL Divisional Weekend, recap SmackDown for you. And if there's anything else that comes around the world of sports, we'll have it on the conversations next week. So that is all the time we have. Thank you again. And until Monday, have a very good weekend. Stay warm, stay dry, stay safe. See you Monday. Take care.